The erroneous belief that Russia is Magog can be traced back to a small group of 18th and 19th century theologians. There is a particular doctrine of demons that has been around, well, for centuries, amongst the Hebrews, and then amongst the Jews, who became Jews in 1880. Before that, they were not Jews. And it's about Gog and Magog. Now, I have preached on this before, and I have said that portion in Ezekiel 38 and 39 has been fulfilled. Now, I made a mistake. I said it was the Scythians. I'm correcting my mistake there, and we'll find out who they really were. Because there's these end-timers always talking about Gog and Magog. They think it's Russia. In my youth, it was Russia and Germany. Gomer was Germany. You don't hear much about Germany today because Germany has ceased to exist as a powerful nation. So where is their reasoning? So I'm going to bring you what I have discovered, written by a Dr. Goodman, who is a Messianic Jew, but listen, who was saved. He got saved in 1987. And he has 3 degrees. He says, while most end times prophecy authors say Russia's origins go back to Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39, this is simply not true. This myth that traces back to the mid-1800s, actually it goes back to John Nelson Darby, is built on historical statements that were deliberately altered, and John Nelson Darby took them up. But he took them up from an English clergyman who altered history. And he said ancient records have been found that tell us the identity of Magog and Russia's origins, which are not Magog. But the Russia is Magog myth persists. It's all over the internet. And he said professional archaeologists know the identity of these nations that are mentioned from the Assyrian royal court records. And they show that each of these nations were there about 100 years before Ezekiel wrote. Ezra in 4:15 and 19 and 5:17 to 6:7 refers to those records. And they say how the Jews of the 5th century, 538 BC to 457 BC, overcame opposition by the local Persian governor to the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem by referring to these same Assyrian cuneiform court records. I have read it myself more than once in the Bible. They are also the same records Bible scholars now use to provide their verification of the Bible's historical records from 805 to 530 BC. So what the Bible says is true. History confirms it. We believed it anyway, before we knew about the history. The Assyrian court records show dealings with Magog, Meshech, Tubal, and Togarmah, Ezekiel 38, 3-6. That stretched across Asia Minor. We were right there. We said it was northwest Asia Minor. That's modern Turkey. We learn that the ancient nation of Gomer, an enemy of the Assyrians, invaded Asia Minor by coming down from an area around the northeast shore of the Black Sea. And the militant leader called Gog led a confederacy of these nations against invading Gomer. Gog is a historical man who the Greeks called Gyges of Lydia. He's a historical figure. In Gyges of Lydia we have the leader the Assyrians called Gog of Magog, who is referred to in the Bible as Gog of Magog. Magog, the land of Gog. Magog is the ancient nation of Lydia that was in the westernmost part of Asia Minor. The Syrians dealt with Lydia through Meshech. It's in It's in Ezekiel, you can read those names. Now it had been believed that this was the tribal name of the Scythians, which I taught previously, and even mentioned that the Scythians were skilled in archery. Well, it turns out so were those who were of Lydia. So it has nothing to do with modern Russia. And Daniel I. Block, professor of Old Testament, Wheaton College, writes, the popular identification of Tubal with Tobolsk in Russia, as Hal Lindsey wrote in the late Great Pertain Earth, is ludicrous. Well, I didn't believe what Hal Lindsey was saying anyway. The popular identification of Meshach with Moscow is absurd. The erroneous belief that Russia's Magog can be traced back to a small group of 18th and 19th century theologians who wrote long before the primary evidence from the ancient Assyrian records was discovered. And actually, they altered sources. Now, there was a statement quoted by the ancient Roman historian Pliny, if you heard of him, in his work The Natural History, that connects Magog with the Scythians. But that's a forgery. Somebody forged it. 19th century Scottish Reverend John Cumming, who was a Presbyterian, is credited as being a leading promoter of the Bible interpretation that calls for Russia invading Israel. In his book, The Destiny of Nations, Cumming quotes a passage from Pliny's book about Magog, which he purposely altered. He wrote, Pliny says, Hierapolis, taken by the Scythians, was afterwards called Magog. Pliny actually wrote this. Bambyx, a part of Lydia, the other name of which Hierapolis, but by the Syrians called Magog. So it was altered. His statement was misquoted by Cumming. And even in the Westminster Review, which is from the Presbyterian Church in 1855, they attacked Cumming for his intellectual dishonesty, anti-Catholic bigotry, and moral and spiritual perversion. See, these people wanted the Pope to be the Antichrist. The correct identification of Magog with Lydia and not Scythia is consistent with the ancient texts of the Assyrians. And of course that also goes, it is not Russia. And they were at various times either allies or foes of the Scythians, but had peaceful dealings with the Lydians, who they also referred to as Magog. Within academia today, no professional archaeologists, historians, or serious Bible researchers associate Magog with the Scythians or the Scythians with the Russians. The truth is that modern scholars have documented that a group of Scandinavian Viking traders called the Rus, I think I heard this years ago, began the Russian state during the mid-AD 800s and gave their name to Russia. So, what everybody from the end time is saying about Ezekiel 38 and 39, that it's going to happen again, is ridiculous. It's already happened. It never will happen. And yet they're all onto it, millions of people just believing what they hear. Well, you better listen to what I said. Because I even looked into it. I thought to myself, well, I want to make sure this person's right too. And so I looked into it, and this is what I discovered. And I have said something like this in my earlier preaching about 2 years ago. The Zondervan Illustrated Bible says Magog may refer to Lydia. The Catholic Encyclopedia says the same thing. And Daniel Block says it was Lydia. And the New Unger's Dictionary says Magog is Lydia. So there you have it. Has nothing to do with Russia. And these millions of Christians in the United States are egging their country on to have a war with Russia so that it can fulfill Ezekiel 38:39. Who do you think's behind it? Satan. Satan. Who do you think Satan's using? The Judaists who wrote the Kabbalah. It's in the Kabbalah. In the Kabbalah that goes back a long, long time. The Judaists gave it to the church so that the church again would be used to fulfill their demonic purposes for the end time that are not written in the Bible, and that who knows is going to happen. Who knows there will be a new world order? We don't know. People are saying it's in the Bible. It is not in the Bible, even as Gog and Magog is not in the Bible. And even Tex Mars fell into that trap, which I saw 2-3 years ago because I read a lot of his books, and when I even bought that book, it's not correct. He's wrong. And a lot of research on my part has proved to me he's wrong. So that's that.